What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at a triple shadow team, all surrounded around meta Pokemon. We have Jumpluff, Drapion, and Annihilape. But the Pokemon we're going to be really focusing on today is Shadow Jumpluff, because we are using Legacy Acrobatics on this Pokemon, along with Aerial Ace. We're running a double flying moveset. Normally that's not recommended because you're completely walled. If you're against something like, I don't know, a rock, for example. However, in this current meta, there's not many Pokemon that wall Jumpluff, and the ones that do are going to beat it either way. So, we're running it with the best, basically, bait and best charge move that it has, and then with just Drapion and Annihilape for some coverage to its weaknesses in the back. Okay, into the first match, we've got a Dewgong. This is a pretty bad lead, so we're going to have to get out of this matchup. We get into our Drapion. They do have super effective drill run coverage, but I will be able to get to a crunch before they're even able to get there, and we can grab an early shield from my opponent. Now, Drapion's kind of already done what it's supposed to do, but my opponent naturally goes for the Ice Wind instead of the drill run. So that actually allows me to get to another crunch, and that does even more damage because we got the defense drop on the first. We also got it on the second. So now my opponent is forced to throw their energy. We can just come in with Annihilape, get the counter farm down, but surely they haven't answered to Annihilape. But apparently they don't, up energy at least, so they just immediately resign the match. Another bad lead, Talonflame, so we instantly get out into Drapion. And what you really should do here is actually throw the Aqua Tail as soon as you get there, because that's the best fast move timing that you can throw it on because of one turn switch. However, if you throw it on 6, then you can cycle reset your opponent and get to another Aqua Tail. So we're actually able to grab both shields early on in this matchup, but they're at back-to-back moves, so I'm kind of just forced to let this go. And they are running Flame Charge, which is pretty interesting. But at this point, I need some fast move pressure, and I need to be able to get to a charge move against my opponent in order to take them out. So I actually come in with my Annihilape here, which might seem a little ridiculous. They try and go for a Rage Fist catch onto their Sableye, but they're unsuccessful. I'm able to save some energy, come in with my Jumpluff. Hopefully they're not running Power Gem. They're actually on return, which means I can overfarm pretty nicely here, get to an Acrobatics. This should be enough to KO from this range, and if not, maybe one Fairy Wind range, but it does. And if they come back in with that Talonflame, I'm going to be able to make it to a Aerial Ace because I'm only 2 Fairy Winds away. That actually doesn't quite KO, but they actually throw their energy, maybe anticipating a switch, or maybe they just want to get off this energy. But at this point, I have Annihilape up energy. It is a Superior in the back. I'm going to farm up to back-to-back close combats, throwing on a potential CMP tie with an Aerial Ace. They do not throw it, which means I can just click the move. Either one would KO from this range. They have no shields remaining. Shadow Annihilape sweeping the end game there, and we're able to take that win. Okay, into the next match, we've got a Sandslash on the lead. Third bad lead in a row, instantly going to get out into our Drapion, and my opponent safe switches into a responds with a Mantine. Mantine is not a great response to a Drapion up energy because it just barely, like 2 crunches won't KO, but if we get a defense drop on the first, it does. Any one charge move won't KO from this range, so I actually let it go. They did farm up to the potential Water Pulse, but I actually try and go for CMP there with my crunch on their second Aerial Ace. They do not throw it, and then they don't throw again, which means I can get to a second crunch. This should grab the second shield from my opponent, so Drapion putting in so much work in these matchups. At this point, I'm 8BA weak to Mantine, so I kind of just have to sacrifice one of my 2 Pokemon. I'm reading that I can just sacrifice my Jumpluff because they already have Sandslash on the lead. I'm not going to need it. They do have super effective Ice Beam. At this point, I'm going to get now a counter energy advantage and just try and go for the full farm down, and it is a Quagsire in the back. I am going to throw the Rage Fist on a potential CMP tie with an Aqua Tail, but I do not believe they threw it. Oh, actually they did, which is fantastic because now we can just shield this up, go for the full counter farm down because our counters are boosted. They are in perfect range. If they come back with the Mantine, they're going to get countered down there as well. And if they come in with the Sandslash, you already know they're going to get countered down. I throw the Rage Fist on CMP with the Ice Punch. This will be enough to KO the Sandslash. Now I'm double boosted. I can counter down the Mantine, and Annihilate takes a 1v3 in the end game there. Yeah, don't give Annihilate a shield advantage. Another terrible lead into the next match, and it is a Shadow Weezing. So we are going to get into our Drapion, going to chip with an Aqua Tail. They do farm up to a potential overheat here, so I will respect it. And it is a Sludge Bait, which is pretty unfortunate. But then they come in with Mandibuzz, so they do not have a great response. We are able to get to an Aqua Tail, and then we can probably even get to another Aqua Tail before my opponent even gets to their first charge move, which is really nice. Aqua Tail will do some decent chip, but it will not KO. And if they don't throw, I'm actually going to get to another Aqua Tail, which is really nice. And now we've got the Mandibuzz already in the red, and I don't believe an Aerial Ace will be able to KO me from this range, so I'm just going to let this go, because they're going to be forced to throw back-to-back moves, and once again, if they try and go for good timing, I'm going to be able to cycle reset them with an Aqua Tail, and now Drapion has somehow grabbed a shield in this matchup, and the Mandibuzz is in the deep red. At this point, they are forced to throw their energy. I can just come in with the Jumpluff and get an energy lead and go for a Fairy Wind farm down. I can take any one charge move here. Aerial Ace will hurt, but it will not be enough to KO, and my opponent actually makes a really nice pivot into their Weezing, understanding I'm ABA weak, but they bait with a Sludge, which actually allows me to get to an Aerial Ace, and this should be enough Shadow on Shadow to KO the Weezing, and it does. Are they going to come back in with that Mandibuzz, or are they going to show their third? They are going to show me their third. It is a Pangoro. We're actually able to outpace, make it to an Aerial Ace. This would be CMP tied with a Night Slash, but maybe they got one turn bring in. But if they didn't, this game is over either way. I've got a Shield and an Annihilate, and they do not get the boost, which means this game is over. My opponent resigns as soon as they see the Annihilate, and we are able to take that win. Guzzlord on the lead. Yes, first positive lead. In this matchup, I like to never bait, because you farm up to an energy ball, it looks like you're just trying to throw on good timing, so you go for the acrobatics. It puts them in 2 Fairy Wind range, which means they don't even get to a Sludge Bomb. So my opponent just instantly resigns the match, and we're able to take that win. So first good lead, and it's an instant win. Second good lead, we have super effective Fairy Winds. They are non-stab, but they are boosted by the Shadow Boost. And we have a pacing advantage in this matchup. So just going to go straight Aerial Ace. My opponent elects to shield the first, so I'm just always going to match shields here. They do throw on really good timing, but I am going to commit the shield. It is just the Dragon Claw. And then they actually switch out into a Jellicent. Now, I could just come in with Drapion, but I want to be able to put this in one crunch range, so I actually chip with an Aerial Ace, and then I come in with my Drapion, because I know one Surf will not be able to KO, and they're never going to be able to Hex farm me down. So I can always just over farm here, and I actually throw 2 because I want to get this crunch off and throw on good timing. And if they let that go, that means that second Hex won't even register, so it's like a free fast move. They come in with a Sandslash. I'm able to get to another crunch before they're even able to get to a move. They let that go, and then they come in back with the Dragonite to get an energy lead, which is a pretty nice play. But because I overfarmed and chipped with an Aerial Ace, I'm actually still able to outpace, get to the Aerial Ace, and at this point, this game is over, especially because they try and throw in good, like right before I get to the move to maximize their energy. But at this point, I can just let that go. I can go for the full counter farm down. Any one move from the Dragonite is probably going to hurt more than the Sandslash, even a Drill Run. So I will just shield that up. I can get the full counter down. I can take any one move here, Ice Punch or Drill Run, Shadow on Shadow. It does not matter. I can take it. We get the counter farm down, and we're able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got a Sandslash. So back to the bad leads. We instantly get out into our Drapion, and I'm not threatened by a Ice Punch, so I wouldn't shield. They actually come in with a Jellicent, which is a bit of an interesting response to a Drapion. And I do accidentally let a Hex through, I believe. However, I can let a Surf go, and they're not going to be able to Hex farm me down, so I should be able to either grab 2 shields in this matchup or take Switch. So I am going to elect to shield the second Surf, and at this point I'm going to overfarm. I'm going to Poison Sting them into Aqua Tail range, and now I'm at back-to-back, So I'm either getting switch or shield, and it looks like I'm going to get both actually, because my opponent decides to commit the first, maybe not knowing that I'm at the back-to-back. So we flip switch. Now we have Annihilate on a Sandslash. However, they are loaded with energy, and we are going to get one turn bring in. That is a given. They do chip with a drill run, and it is a Feraligatr in the back. Now this is awkward. I kind of have to call the bait here, but I end up deciding not to. And they do bait. However, that does mean I can make it to an Acrobatics. And Acrobatics is such a good move. It's Shadow on Shadow, so it will still KO. But now I've potentially given them a win con where they can just fully Powder Snow farm me down. But here's the thing, Shadow Jumpluff hits like a truck. There's one in Acrobatics. Here comes an Aerial Ace, 4 Fairy Winds after, which is absolutely absurd. Aerial Ace KOs a Sandslash. Jumpluff is a Alolan Sandslash counter confirmed, and we're able to take that win. Steelix on the lead. Okay, this is a tough lead. Obviously, we kind of want to stay in this matchup, but at the same time, we're just going to take this Psychic Fangs and then maybe instantly come in with Drapion. That's exactly what we're going to do, and then that way we can make it to an Aqua Tail, reset the debuff, and now we have energy on our Jumpluff, which can go maybe somewhere in the back, hopefully. They did only farm up to either a Breaking Swipe or a Psychic Fangs, so I will let this go. It is just another Psychic Fangs. They try and go for an Aqua Tail catch, but I actually hold on to my energy. I'm able to make it to a crunch. It's Annihilate in the back. So this actually might be the team that I used to run the Legend in a previous season, which was Steelix, Annihilate, Jumpluff. So I guess we'll see. And they actually let that go and they live, which is pretty unfortunate. If this is an Ice Punch, this will do significant damage. But it is just the Rage Fist, so we can let that go. Instantly switching here into our Annihilate. Parang, it is not the Jumpluff in the back. Get a few counters through, but it is the Jumpluff in the back, so it's literally the Legend team that I used. And we do farm up to an Ice Punch to at least bait the Ice Punch, and we just throw the Rage Fist. But I need my Annihilate alive, so I will just shield that up. I'm going to overfarm. Farming up once again to the Ice Punch, really hoping that my opponent shields, because if they do, I can combo with an Acrobatics, but they don't, which puts me in a really tough position. At this point, I have to just kind of really count on my Jumpluff here. I farm up 3 Fairy Winds, so that way if they do shield this up, I can throw back-to-back moves and KO, and they do shield, which is massive, because now I can just shield this up, get to another Aerial Ace. It actually doesn't KO. They bank the energy, but I'm actually able to outpace, and I would just no shield if they did make it to a Psychic Fangs. Aerial Ace KOs from this range. They know they need to make it to back-to-back moves, but they're going to throw either way, and at this point I can just shield this up, Fairy Wind farm down, and somehow we are able to beat my Legend team with terrible alignment. Claydol on the lead in the next match. Here's how I like to play this out. I like to farm up to a potential energy ball and then just bait with an Aerial Ace, because if you full send the Acrobatics, they are more inclined to just no shield the second, because then they know for sure that you're on double flying movesets. I mean, if you're on double nuke and then you bait with an Acrobatics, that could be kind of genius too. But I am gonna just eat the first Rock Tomb and then go for an Acrobatics. And that this time they will let it through. So I will just overfarm here, go for another Acrobatics after a few more Fairy Winds, because the Fairy Winds should put it in range. Even though we are double debuffed here, we should be able to take this in the ones, and we do, which is really nice. And it's a Bastiodon in the back, so I'm safe switching into my Drapion. It is a Wigglytuff. I throw an alignment because my fast move timing is terrible apparently. But that is okay, because we can still make it to another Aqua Tail, and if my opponent doesn't throw, I'm actually going to make it to a third and be able to flip switch, and they actually let that go, which means this game is instantly over. Without the Wiggly, they have no check to my Annihilate. I can just come in with my Jumpluff, get the full Fairy Wind farm down. I do end up just throwing an Acrobatics here because I'm just curious to see how much damage it does. It is double resisted. Bastiodon is super bulky, but it's such a good move. Yeah, that just does abysmal damage, but it doesn't matter at this point. I have Annihilate on the Bastiodon and I'm able to take that win. into the last match of the video, or the last battle of the video. It is a Golisopod on the lead, one of our few good leads with this team. Yeah, Jumpluff, not a good lead right now. I would not recommend it. However, they do go for the X-Scissor. I'd try to overfarm there, and they try and go for a catch, but at this point I am just going to show that I'm running Acrobatics because I don't have a great response, and that actually puts it in a crunch range, which is exactly what we need. We can take any one charge move here. Ice Beam will not be enough to KO, and then I will just overfarm slightly here, throwing the crunch as late as possible with a potential CMP tie of the Sludge, just because I don't want to take a Sludge here at this point with the Mud Shots, and it is able to get the KO. They have a Claydol in the back, which is really tough because that means I do not have an answer to their lead Pokemon. So I am forced to kind of just come in with my Annihilate because my Annihilate just doesn't really have anywhere to go. At this point, I will just let this go. It's an Ice Beam from my opponent, and I am able to get to a Rage Fist here. This should be enough to KO from this range, and they let that go. And now we have a 2-shield Jumpluff, and at this point, Shadow, Golisopod's Glassy, I can just go for Aerial Ace. Yeah, even if they call the bait, it does not matter. They need to make it to 3 moves before I get a Fairy Wind farm down, and you're just not getting there with this Shadow boost on Jumpluff. But yeah, that is a triple Shadow team with a pretty meta line, but we are looking at Acrobatics today, and it is such a good move. Am I completely convinced that Acrobatics is just the better way to go? Not 100%. That being said, I do think using the best damage per energy move on a Pokemon is usually the way to go. If Jumpluff ever gets a cheap bait grass move in the future, I think that will absolutely transform this Pokemon. It's already really strong as is, but I think that would absolutely make this Pokemon even better. And then, oh my god, the strength of Shadow Drapion as a safe swap, and then Annihilate as a closer. That's why we're running close combat in this Pokemon. Both of these Pokemon are absolutely insane in their respective positions as a safe swap and then as a closer. I mean, they're just absolutely nuts. And they do pair really well with Jumpluff. So, yeah, that's going to be it for me for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.